All right, let's get to some Texas-Baylor discussion. I think the biggest, or at least my top issue, the one thing I'm looking for in this game versus Baylor, and I think Texas right now 2 touchdown. Ty probably knows. Is it more than a 2 touchdown favorite?
I honestly don't know yet.
Okay,
it is. It's 14 and a half.
It was, yeah. I see. It was like
and
13 and a half, and I think it's growing.
Wait, before you give your
no, go ahead.
For doesn't it feel like it should be? If you just look at the numbers of these teams, it should be more.
Yeah, but I think they're expecting Baylor to put up a hell of a fight.
I know.
And Texas.
I'm just saying, if you see that number, you're like, wait a second.
Versus the number 3 team in the country?
With a backup quarterback who against Long Island threw for 113 yards. He's thrown for 1 touchdown and 3 picks this year.
I don't disagree with that.
He was dreadful against Utah.
Yeah, but well, you will admit, Wyoming had a backup quarterback in there, too, and played with Texas for 3 quarters.
That's very true. 100% true.
And I think that's what makes it like, yeah, Texas they're one of those teams, like, it's really tough to predict Texas because they haven't necessarily been, like I said, a 4-quarter dominant team. They have these spurts where they can put a team away because they kind of just catch fire.
Explosive.
Right? They talk,
and that's what Baylor is not.
Category 5 explosivity.
Baylor is completely not explosive. Right? They're gosh, they ran the ball 50 times last week against Long Island.
Well, that's to hide Sawyer Robertson.
Yes,
right?
You're trying to hide your quarterback.
You got to hide that guy a little bit. And since we're talking about Sawyer Robertson, we can start there. I just think if Texas is able to get him in 3rd and long, that's how, was it Svoboda? Svoboda? Yeah. I can't say his name correctly. I apologize. Svoboda. Yeah, Svoboda. There you go. He actually stayed out of 3rd and long for Wyoming, and that was the key. He was only in 3rd and long. I think
they managed that game very well. Yes. Wyoming did
4 times that I counted. In 3rd and long is 3rd and 7+. I counted 3rd and long 4 times total. That's manageable. Like you said, manage the game for even an average to below average quarterback. That's manageable because the throws that you're going to have to make to convert aren't the degree of difficulty, right? Isn't very high, right? You're talking about slants. You're talking about quick outs, which is what Wyoming threw. A lot of quick outs. These are throws that quarterbacks warm up with every day. And they're relatively easier throws, high percentage throws. If Texas doesn't put Sawyer Robertson in 3rd and long more than 4 times, that could be a problem. All right, that means Baylor is winning 1st down, which is probably going to be the most important down defensively for Texas in this game versus Baylor. If they can win 1st down, and that's going to be key because in gap control is going to be big. They run a lot of zone. I mean, a ton of wide zone, inside zone. The key is with zone, you got to be gap sound. You can penetrate because sometimes they actually encourage you to, right? And they'll kind of use that momentum and that penetration against you because they'll just sweep you on by the action. That's why you got to be gap sound against a team like Baylor. Otherwise, they'll break some big runs. And they got some explosive athletes in the backfield, too. So winning 1st down is key. You win 1st down, then you force them to 2nd and long, 3rd and long. And that's where they don't want Sawyer Robertson in 3rd and long. That's when the Texas pass rush can really tee off. So defensively, I do think that 1st down is going to be key. Offensively, I'm watching, and this is probably the top thing that I'm watching, is what's the start for Sark, right? Sark now, I think he feels confident that all of his efforts in the offseason to get this team to focus on responding to adversity, making good adjustments in the second half, in the 4th quarter, that's paying off. This team is a 4th quarter team, and we want them to be a 4-quarter team, but they're not very good in the 1st quarter anymore, which is what Longhorn fans have become accustomed to. So I want to see in this game what the opening script's going to look like for Sark now that that's become a point of criticism from Longhorn fans, that the opening, and even he talked about it and addressed it in the post-game press conference, that the opening script is not as prolific and is not as explosive as it was in previous years. But the 4th quarter is the best 4th quarter response we've seen from this team, or at least for any Sark team since he's been here at Texas, and they're cultivating a bit of the clutch gene. So here's what I think Sark should do it and what I think he will do. And I'm doing some deeper dives in the numbers about it, but I think against Baylor, he comes out in heavier personnel. And I listen, Sark loves 11, which is 1 back, 1 tight end. He's got that full complement of those great wide receivers, X-Man, A.D. Mitchell, and Jay Witt, right? And those guys it's really tough to match up with those wide receivers. But it's interesting. I think the offense may do better starting out in heavier personnel in this matchup And maybe in some other matchups. Remember against Bama, they start out in 12 personnel. 1 back, 2 tight ends. They just go empty formation. Right? They present a power package and they pivot to pass principles. I think versus Baylor, you give them pretty much the option. If you go 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, and that means you can run the football. If Baylor wants to, and Baylor has a good defensive line, if they want to match up with your heavier personnel, with their rush defense, then you can throw out of it. And you still have the advantage because your tight end is one of the best in the country, and your 2 wide receivers are really good, even if you can design and manipulate a one-on-one matchup, which Sark also does really well. That's essentially what Texas did a lot of versus Alabama. They came out in 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. They threw the ball up close to 50% of the time versus Bama out of 12 personnel. Usually he's close to 30-something% there. I think against Baylor, if they come out in their sub packages and they want to still play the pass when you got your heavier personnel out there, that's great. You can just run the ball because you'll have the numbers advantage in the run game like you did versus Wyoming. You ran the ball a ton versus Wyoming late to really seal that game, and you did it with 12 personnel. I think Sark may have been revealing something there that maybe his 12 personnel group is what he trusts to be able to run the football consistently. And I would say versus Baylor, that may be the package you see early. Now, I think Sark will get into the habit of, ending the game however he needs to, right? If he needs to break out 12 to do it or 11 to do it, he can do that. But to start the game, I think it'll have to be based on the matchup week to week. And I think this matchup with Baylor, I would encourage Baylor to try to stop the run for Texas. If they don't, great, shove it down their throat, let them choke on it. But if they, right, but
choke on it.
Right, yeah. But if they want to stop the run, they go, man, they're coming out with heavier sets. Texas got the biggest O-line in the Big 12. We got to stop the run against Texas, and they match your heavy personnel. Great, that means one-on-one matchups on the outside for X-Man or JT Sanders, or an A.D. Mitchell, or whoever you put in there, Jay Witt. So that may be one of my ways, to really juice the opening script. Start out heavy, but pivot to pass in the heavy personnel. Present them with their own, pick your poison.
Well,
scenario.
If you go back and watch, the Texas State game they lost, they gave up 42 points, and they're just. And then the game that I would watch if you're watching film on Baylor is the Utah game. That's as close as you're going to get to like athletes as far as the Baylor Bears. They're just not very talented, Rod. They're just not. There's nobody that, like with Texas, whatever you think of the Longhorns and whether they play up or down to people, you see guys that just jump off the screen that are really talented,
yes,
right? They're just.
Yep.
Baylor doesn't have anybody really. You're like, who are these guys? They tried to survive the Utah game until their quarterback Sawyer Robertson threw 2 fourth-quarter interceptions that were unforgivable.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to win this game if they're going to win it with their defense, right? They're going to try to do what Wyoming did, shorten the game, play great Dave Aranda defense, challenge Texas, force them. Because the one thing Quinn Ewers hasn't done this year is turn the ball over.
He's not turnover prone. He's not one of those guys.
Right, and if Texas doesn't turn the ball over in this game, I don't think this game will be very close. And if they turn it over, all of a sudden you could have a close game in Waco. This Baylor team, Dave Aranda has not done a good job of bringing in talent, just based on what I've seen through 3 games so far. No, I totally agree with you. But the one thing I will say about Dave Aranda, he's a defensive mind. Sure he is.
We don't know if he's a great head coach, a good head coach anymore, because it just hasn't. It seems like he did more with Matt Rule's players, and now that he has been able to build it, his way and construct this roster his way, it seems like the program's progressing. But he did expose Texas pass protection issues last year. And he was able to do it with a really impressive pressure package. And that's, you've heard me say it ad nauseum about the amoeba fronts and the simulated pressures. That's why Baylor had 5 sacks last season. So he exposed Texas and pretty much provided other teams with the blueprint to how to pressure the Texas quarterback. And in this game, I'm wondering if he's going to bring back a lot of those concepts, which also Texas has struggled with a little bit this season, struggled in the Rice game with some of those concepts. Even Wyoming brought him out there. I think he's going to add to those pressure packages, and you'll see him early and often if Texas is in predictable passing situations. If they can stay out of that by going heavy early on and playing a little bit of bully ball, and if they, like I said, if they want to match you and try to encounter your bully ball, great. That means I'll get favorable matchups in the passing game. So I think that's the way to kind of manipulate it if you're Sark.
No question. No question.